Legislator Mulaney is the one who first brought this to our attention. He should be the one to explain this.
Quite simply put, it allows the first responder, when operating in a high-stress environment, whether it be firefighters, police officers, EMS, whatever it may be, it allows them to offer a warning to bystanders surrounding them, to give them a zone of 15 feet to surround them, for not only for the first responders' protection, but for the protection of whoever the first responder is tending to, as well as for the protection of the people who are looking either inadvertently or on purpose to get involved. It's a great law. It goes further, not only, like I said, to protect just the first responder, but very often people don't realize that they're getting involved in an incident as bystanders, but just by sheer closeness, sometimes they're dragged into it. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryder.
I have to just say, it's more of a statement than anything else, but I don't know if you were here last week or a few weeks ago when we talked about this. I think this is great. I think it's very important to have this for our first responders, because I've seen, when I was a prosecutor, I saw countless body camera videos of police officers, EMTs, firefighters who are trying to do their jobs, and they get distracted, they get attacked by people who think they're trying to help, and they're just really hurting the situation. And I had said at the outset that I wanted to support this bill and sponsor this bill, and I'm going to renew that and speak on behalf of my caucus here that we all want to co-sponsor this bill because we support it. But I also want to thank the county attorney's office because at my request, they did provide an opinion on the law, a legal opinion on the law. It was substantial, 8 or 10 pages long, regarding the legal ramifications of this law. And fortunately, they took the request seriously, and they made their observations and determinations about the legality of the proposed law. And because of that, there were changes made to the law to make it even more legally sufficient and strong, so that we don't end up litigating this in the court system, and we can protect our first responders, which is what the goal was when I made that request. This reminds me of when we made the request for that mask ban, to try and find something to protect our officers, to make sure it's not held up in court and we don't end up being litigated to eternity on this matter. And that's why something like this from the county attorney is beneficial to all of us, and we need things like this. It would have been very helpful for the mask ban. That being said, the fact that the law has been modified to make it more specific and specifically outline what can and can't be done by people who are observing these situations, what can and can't be done by the police officers, and that it requires the police officers to specifically, or the first responders, to specifically say, get back. Because it doesn't mean a person can't walk up to a police officer and talk to them, but if an officer is in a situation that he or she needs space, or a first responder is in a position that he or she needs space to work, they can direct someone to back up. And now with this law, they have a legal benefit or legal protection to make sure that people have to listen. And because of the way this is written, I think it's legally sound, it's legally safe, and it does what we need to protect our first responders. And again, I'm fully supportive of it, and I look forward to voting for this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, legislative body. My name is Kiana Gary. It's been some time since I've been here. I'm speaking on the protection zone bill in strong opposition. This is now the 5th or 6th legislative item that has come from this government and violates the Constitution or Nassau County Charter. This legislative body has actively laid the groundwork for a constitutional crisis on Long Island for years, providing a testing ground for the current president's assault on our rights nationally. The amount of lawsuits this governing body has entangled itself with because of its obsession with testing constitutional limits and desperate attempts to appeal to Trump is abhorrent. This bill will easily be added to the list. Your unconstitutional actions are costing residents millions. These lawsuits are paid by taxpayers, not you, and you're wasting our money. In 2020, I was told all lives matter. I'm still waiting to see that actually come to fruition. Instead, I'm speaking against legislation written to protect a job instead of the people the job serves. This bill puts non-white communities in dangerous and unnecessary situations. This bill is also redundant to state and federal protections already allotted to all first responders. It makes no one safe. Maybe instead of creating a buffer zone, this body should focus on initiating all of the alternative policing practices outlined in the People's Plan from 2021, since we're talking about previous things that was presented to this legislative body. You could release all of the funding due to Democratic districts, mine included. We're still waiting for funding for our parks, for our programs. programs for our initiatives. Perhaps you could stop cutting funding for early childhood programs, Head Start programs that are in non-white, non-Republican districts. You can provide funding for critical infrastructures, provide clean air, clean water, and safer roadways, again, for non-white, non-Republican communities. Or you can provide funding for families and businesses who need critical support to stay on Long Island. Any of these options are readily available to this body to review and implement to keep all communities safe. It couldn't possibly be because you consistently honor the same exact people that donate to your campaign coffers. You honor and do more for police than you do for teachers, community leaders, nurses, or any other union in Nassau County. We, the over-policed community, reserve every right to ensure that officers are following the law and that everyone leaves the situation safely. We, the over-policed communities, reserve the right to record an officer's face, badge, number, and name. We, the overly policed community, have rights, know what they are, and will use them. It would be wonderful to be represented by a governing body that sees the mental health crisis of police officers as an opportunity to implement services and programs that reduce police work, but that level of leadership and foresight is sorely lacking. This is another bill that puts the responsibility of generating revenue for the county on the backs of already financially strained and over-policed communities. Instead of releasing funding to actually support first responders in all county districts, this legislative body is playing political games with everyone's livelihood. It is the first responders' job to be prepared for every situation. If they need this much legislation to make it safe for them, then there's something seriously wrong with their training. Lastly, the Long Island Progressive Coalition collected 300, probably more, letters of opposition to this legislation. I suggest that this legislative body stop enacting unconstitutional laws and allowing the county executive to violate the Nassau County Charter. Since it appeases the Republicans' God, aka President Trump, to infringe on constitutional rights, I encourage the Democratic caucus to abstain or vote against this legislation.
My name is Jeremy Joseph. I'm a resident of Hicksville. I'm a member of Long Island United to Transform Policing and Community Safety. There is a constant pattern when it comes to policing bills in Nassau County. We as residents continually call for more transparency, accountability, and additional measures to bring down barriers between a closed-off police force and our communities. We want to create a system where there is trust and cooperation. That is what makes Nassau County safer. Instead, we get the opposite. We've had to fight against bills that make protesting a crime, a ban on masks that harms residents with health concerns, and now we're speaking out against this bill, which would create a 15-foot so-called buffer zone that would make being some proximity from an officer a misdemeanor with a charge of up to $1,000 or up to a year imprisonment or both. No one wants police officers responding to a call to be interfered with. But this bill is so broad, I can't begin to go into all the ways it can be abused. How do we define a high-stress situation for officers? How are these formal warnings issued, and to who? How are Good Samaritans protected? Is a police officer going to stand there with a measuring tape and decide who is in the buffer zone? And if your argument is to cite the intent of this bill, let me remind you that a law is defined by its language, and the language of this bill is vague and harmful. If someone commits a crime against an officer, there are plenty of laws to bring about appropriate charges. Standing nearby an officer is not a crime and is protected by multiple laws, federal and state, notably New York's Right to Monitor Act. If you want to make Nassau County safer, advocates have made many proposals to break down barriers between police and our communities. We made proposals to train cops. I'm sorry, do we need to stop? Okay. We made proposals to train police officers to recognize and report hate crimes, to fully document these instances and make them publicly known for the benefit of our community, and this legislature rejected it. We suggested models from successful programs around the country for mental health crisis response, because these crises often require a trained mental health professional, not an officer with a gun, and this legislator rejected it. We practically beg for expanded language access for emergency services because non-English speakers in Nassau County, of which there are many, deserve to be safe too, and this legislature rejected it. A safer Nassau County means we have a police force that looks like our communities and are connected to them. Instead, you are putting up barriers and very literally trying to put distance between us. How are we supposed to trust a police force to serve us when they are increasingly being given more and more tools to unfairly criminalize us? If you want to start making Nassau County safer, start with rejecting this bill.
Susan,
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Susan Goddard. I'm the director of the Nassau County, New York Civil Liberties Union. We submitted testimony this morning that I suggest everybody look at, and Mr. Cosell, I'm not quite sure we agree with you on your assessment. Every time a court has heard a case of this kind, it has been thrown out on First and 14th Amendment grounds. The bill is vague and overly broad. Other than some vague language, including highly subjective circumstances like protecting property and maintaining public safety, it does not place limits on the use or duration of that zone. It doesn't clarify when the tactic is prohibited, like creating overlapping zones for crowd control that would deprive the public of lawful access to public spaces. It doesn't explain how bystanders may lawfully interact with police at close range or how pedestrians can navigate the zones without facing an unacceptable risk of arrest. It doesn't state whether valid warnings may be directed to an entire crowd or an individual. It doesn't address journalists and their right to record, and it also does not address the conflict with the New York State Right to Monitor Act. This law will significantly curtail the legal ability to record badge numbers and names, which Nassau SVO officers do not have on their uniforms, which is outrageous, as well as closed-in video will provide an arbitrary tool to single out and punish particular activists. It will allow arbitrary dispersal of people from legal spaces. So First Amendment rights violations include the public's right to film, including at close range. Neither is the right of journalists to film, observe, and approach a newsworthy event. That's a right they have that this would play with. The right to freely use public sidewalks, parks, public spaces, and government buildings cannot be curtailed with a move-along order without cause. For these and many other reasons outlined in NYCLU's written testimony submitted today, this bill will not pass First Amendment muster. 14th Amendment, laws written in a way that leaves the public unable to understand what might get them into trouble, violates due process. Regarding failure to follow an order, due process requires a clear warning about the behavior that will prompt such an order. This bill would have first responders arbitrarily excluding the public from public spaces, imposing buffer zones, and unreasonably arresting people without guidance based on unclear standards. That is not fair to the officers, nor is it fair to the public. That places unfettered discretion in the officers' hands. This violates due process as well, and courts have found accordingly. There is no clear guidance to officers and gives pedestrians no idea what is expected of them. Please do not pass this bill and do not expose Nassau County to another costly lawsuit. I think you all have more important things to do with your time and our money.
We're going to vote on the law. Which is the local law to add dialogue, chapter 8 of the Nassau County Administrative Code in relation to ensuring the safety of first responders. Motion by Dr. Cosell, seconded by Minority Leader Richie Whitman. All those, now we have an amendment in the nature of a substitution, which is in your handouts there. Motion by Dr. Cosell, seconded by Minority Leader Richie Whitman on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment?
What's the amendment?
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Now, on the item as.
What's the amendment?
What's the amendment? Can you tell the public?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Very nice of you.
The amendment delineates specific situations in which the zone protection may be created around the first responder. And we believe that this is going to help it pass muster.
Are you going to read it?
Constitutional grounds.
I think you just read it.
That it?
Vote on the item as amended. Motion by Deputy Cosell, second by Minority Leader
important.
Number 29, resolution number 62.
Waste more